New Year's Eve was supposed to be a night of fun. Friends and family gathered at the Fallis home, laughing, dancing, and celebrating. Ashley Fallis was at the center of it all, smiling and enjoying the moment. To everyone around her, she seemed happy. But behind the scenes, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Then, just after midnight, everything changed. A single gunshot broke the party's excitement. Guests rushed toward the bedroom, confusion turning into panic. Within minutes, a frantic 911 call was made. When first responders arrived, Ashley was on the floor, unresponsive. A gun lay nearby. Her husband, Tom, was the only one with her. He told police it was a horrible tragedy, something no one could have stopped. But as investigators started asking questions, things didn't add up. A neighbor claimed she heard Ashley yell just before the shot. Others remembered tension between her and Tom. And then there was the biggest question of all. Was this truly an accident, or was there something more going on? What really happened in that bedroom? Ashley and Tom first connected in the spring of 2007 through an online dating platform. From the start, Ashley's vibrant personality and boundless energy captivated Tom, and their bond quickly deepened. Ashley was already a devoted mother to 2 daughters from a previous marriage, and their relationship progressed swiftly. Within a year, they welcomed a son, and just 2 weeks after his birth, they exchanged vows. By 2010, Tom had legally adopted Ashley's daughters, solidifying their family unit. They settled into their life together, but by late 2011, tensions had begun to surface. Their daughters were now 9 and 6, and their youngest had just turned 3. His diagnosis of hydrocephalus meant multiple surgeries, adding an immense burden to Ashley. Juggling her son's medical needs, parenting, and the growing strains in her marriage left her emotionally drained. In 2010, Ashley Fallis lost her job at the North Colorado Medical Center, officially due to insubordination and aggressive behavior. She disputed the decision in court and won a settlement, but the legal victory did little to alleviate her mounting personal struggles. The following year, she rekindled a brief romance with a former high school sweetheart, further straining her already fragile marriage. Around the same time, Ashley sought psychiatric treatment for frequent panic attacks, sometimes experiencing up to 5 a week. She was prescribed medication to manage her anxiety and stabilize her mood, but her mental health remained a significant challenge for both her and Tom. Despite knowing about her infidelity, Tom chose to stay in the marriage. Investigators would later uncover old divorce papers in their bedroom, documents Ashley had drafted in 2009 when the couple had considered splitting due to conflicting work schedules. However, they had ultimately decided to push through and rebuild their relationship. As time passed, Tom believed they were making progress. He had secured stable work as a corrections officer, while Ashley had found solace in speaking engagements, sharing her experiences as a mother of a child with hydrocephalus. She offered guidance and support to other parents navigating similar challenges. Then, just weeks before the tragic night, Ashley took a home pregnancy test. To her surprise, the result was positive. An unexpected development, since she had undergone sterilization after their youngest son's birth. Clinging to the hope that the test was accurate, she immediately stopped taking her prescribed anxiety medication. But on December 31, 2011, just hours before they were to host a New Year's Eve gathering, Ashley began her menstrual cycle. A second test confirmed she was not pregnant after all, delivering an emotional blow to both her and Tom. That morning, the couple had been discussing whether a reversal of her procedure was possible. Years earlier, Ashley's mother had encouraged the decision, But now, the choice was entirely in their hands. Both Ashley and Tom expressed a desire to expand their family, and the unexpected news left them in a deeply emotional state as they prepared for the party that evening. Their home was filled with friends and family as they rang in the new year. Despite her internal turmoil, Ashley put on a brave face, drinking, dancing, and enjoying the company of her loved ones. Her parents, Joe and Jenna, later recalled that she seemed as lively and strong as ever. Yet, according to Tom, beneath her cheerful exterior, she was battling emotions no one else could see. That night, as the celebration carried on, a conversation between Ashley and Tom took a tense turn. Tom later recounted that their discussion had escalated into a fight. Wanting to avoid further conflict, he said he had walked away. During his police interview, investigators noticed scratches on Tom's chest and neck, marks that raised immediate suspicions. When questioned, he attributed the ones on his chest to irritation from shaving for the first time, while those on his neck, he claimed, could have been caused by stress. As the interrogation intensified, Tom felt cornered, asserting that he was being unjustly accused. He repeatedly insisted on his innocence, maintaining that he was not in the room when the gun went off and that he had nothing to do with Ashley's death. As the investigation unfolded, detectives began questioning neighbors and examining the scene for any clues. One neighbor reported hearing Ashley yell, "Get off me!" just moments before the gunshot rang out. Her statement directly contradicted Tom's version of events. When questioned about the alleged shouting, Tom firmly denied it. He insisted he had never forced Ashley to do anything against her will. But investigators weren't satisfied with his answers. They pointed out that Ashley's gunshot wound was to the back of her head, a location that made self-inflicted harm highly improbable. In response, Tom demanded forensic testing to prove his innocence. He urged authorities to test his hands for gunpowder residue and insisted that Ashley's hands be examined as well to determine if she could have fired the weapon. Despite his cooperation, detectives remained unconvinced. The circumstances of the shooting, combined with conflicting accounts, left too many unanswered questions. While Tom sat in the police station, Ashley was in the hospital where doctors fought to save her life. Tragically, just hours after her admission, she succumbed to her injuries. When Tom was informed of her passing, he appeared devastated. He claimed that in the moments after the shooting, when he held Ashley in his arms, he had seen her breathing and truly believed she had a chance to survive. After 3 hours of interrogation, investigators had not secured a confession from Tom, nor had they been able to rule him out as a suspect. As the questioning continued, he became increasingly frustrated, repeating that he would never harm his wife. However, just 4 days after the shooting, Ashley's death was officially ruled as self-inflicted. The medical examiner's conclusion came before lab tests had even been completed, leaving Ashley's family in disbelief. Her parents, Jenna and Joe, were outraged, convinced that the investigation had been handled improperly. They suspected Tom's job in the county's correctional system had influenced the outcome, giving him an unfair advantage in the case. Though Tom worked in a separate law enforcement division, making direct ties to the investigating detectives difficult to prove, the family believed his background played a role in how the case was closed so quickly. To ensure transparency, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation was brought in, but critical errors had already been made. Tom had not been separated from witnesses at the crime scene, violating standard investigative procedures. More importantly, his hands had not been properly covered to preserve potential gunpowder residue, evidence that could have been crucial in determining what really happened that night. Jenna and Joe felt detectives had only begun treating Tom as a person of interest after their repeated insistence. Even then, they believed the inquiry remained superficial. They criticized law enforcement for only questioning Tom for 3 hours, far too brief, in their view, for the primary person involved in a suspicious death. In the end, Tom was allowed to walk free. In the aftermath of the tragedy, Tom left the state with the children, relocating to Indiana to be near his sister. He enrolled in college, seeking a fresh start. But Ashley's parents refused to let the case be forgotten. Determined to fight for justice, they reached out to the media, speaking out about their daughter's love for life and their belief that she would never have chosen to end it. They also described Tom's history of a short temper, painting a different picture than the one law enforcement had seemingly accepted. Their persistence caught the attention of investigative reporter Justin Joseph, who uncovered a key witness, 17-year-old Nick Glover, a neighbor of the Fallis family. Nick recalled that on January 1, 2012, as emergency vehicles arrived at the Fallis residence, he had overheard Tom say to Ashley's parents, "I shot my wife." Even more troubling was what Nick revealed next. He stated that he had shared this information with detectives during an interview, yet there was no mention of his statement in the official police reports. The missing documentation raised serious concerns about the integrity of the investigation. The possibility that the detectives had deliberately excluded key testimony to shield Tom from scrutiny led to allegations of misconduct and cover-up. Ashley's family and supporters demanded a deeper investigation, convinced that the truth had been buried, and that justice for Ashley had yet to be served. In April 2014, more than 2 years after Ashley's death, the Evans Police Department decided to reopen the case. New allegations had emerged, suggesting that the detectives had intentionally omitted key evidence and altered a witness's statement to fit the theory that Ashley had taken her own life. Despite these claims, law enforcement officials maintained that the original investigation had been thorough and unbiased. On November 18, 2014, authorities arrested Tom Fallis near his home in Indiana. He was charged with second-degree manslaughter but adamantly maintained his innocence. The case had already garnered widespread public attention, largely due to investigative reporting by Justin Joseph. Even as the trial loomed, many unanswered questions remained. Among them was the significance of bruises found on Ashley's legs, which some speculated were linked to a flashlight discovered at the scene. However, further examination revealed that the flashlight belonged to an officer who had attempted to administer first aid and was unrelated to the incident. The prosecution built its case around the claim that, during a heated argument, Tom grabbed the handgun that Ashley kept under the mattress, pressed it against her head, and pulled the trigger. He carefully laid her body on the floor before calling emergency services. During the trial, Ashley's mother took the stand and testified that Tom had behaved aggressively at the New Year's Eve party, using harsh words that led to a confrontation. Tom denied these accusations. Later, she mentioned a history of mental illness in Ashley's family, revealing that both her grandmother and uncle had died by suicide. The prosecution used this information to suggest that Ashley may have voluntarily taken her own life. However, Ashley's psychiatrist presented a different perspective. He testified that as of December 2011, she showed no signs of depression. Meanwhile, the defense argued that Ashley had been seeing 2 psychiatrists and a therapist at the same time, resulting in overlapping prescriptions. They suggested that this could have contributed to mood swings or emotional distress. Forensic experts presented conflicting testimony. A specialist who had spent countless hours analyzing the evidence argued that Tom could not have been the one to fire the fatal shot. He pointed out that those who commit crimes of passion rarely stop after a single gunshot. Another forensic expert reviewed the case files and personally examined the crime scene. He determined that Tom had been extremely close to Ashley when the shot was fired. According to him, if Tom had been farther away, the blood spatter would have been more widespread. His findings were based on the documented timeline of when Tom reached Ashley and attempted to provide aid. The prosecution leaned heavily on this analysis to challenge the defense's arguments. Another key aspect of the case involved Ashley's emotional struggles surrounding pregnancy. While an autopsy confirmed that Ashley was not pregnant at the time of her death, it revealed that despite undergoing tubal ligation, she still could have conceived. According to court testimony, in the 9 months leading up to her death, Ashley had believed she was pregnant on 3 separate occasions. Prosecutors argued that these false alarms had taken a serious emotional toll, exacerbating her existing struggles. Psychiatrists called to the stand described how these circumstances might have profoundly affected her mental state. As the trial progressed, Nick Glover, a crucial witness, took the stand. He testified that on the night of Ashley's death, he had overheard Tom say to her parents, "I shot my wife." This statement became a focal point for the prosecution. Another witness, Chelsea, was also expected to support the claim that Ashley had screamed, "Get off me," before the gunshot. However, Chelsea's testimony took an unexpected turn. Nick's mother, Kathy, had previously stated that Chelsea had clearly heard the argument. But when Chelsea took the stand, she admitted she had been drinking heavily that night and could not clearly recall what had happened. Despite this, Nick remained firm in his account, stating that he would never forget what he had heard. With conflicting testimonies and disputed forensic evidence, the trial became a battle of interpretation, leaving the jury with the difficult task of deciding what really happened that night. Nick Glover's statements caught the attention of investigators, prompting an internal review of the officer who had initially interviewed him on the night of Ashley's death. The review aimed to determine whether the detective had intentionally failed to document Tom's alleged confession. However, the investigation ultimately found no evidence of misconduct, and the detective maintained that Nick had never made such a statement during their interview. During cross-examination, the defense scrutinized Nick's testimony, pointing out multiple inconsistencies. They emphasized that despite claiming to have heard Tom admit to shooting Ashley, Nick had continued to maintain a friendly relationship with him for months afterward. He had even participated in family activities, including camping trips and Christmas celebrations. When asked to explain why he remained close to Tom, despite allegedly hearing him confess, Nick repeatedly answered, "I don't remember," more than 90 times. Later, another witness, a police officer, came forward with his own account. He claimed that upon arriving at the scene, he heard Tom shouting, "I can't believe I shot her. I can't believe she's dead." This statement was a potential breakthrough for the prosecution, but the defense quickly raised doubts. They pointed out that the crime scene had been crowded with officers, first responders, family members, and neighbors. Yet no one else had reported hearing Tom make such an admission. Furthermore, the police had failed to detain Tom at the scene, citing jurisdictional limitations. Adding to the skepticism, the defense revealed that the detective in charge of the case had never formally documented his claims. He had waited 3 years before mentioning the alleged confession, and his credibility was further damaged when it was revealed that he had later been dismissed from the sheriff's office for dishonesty. These revelations cast serious doubt on the prosecution's argument and weakened the reliability of their witnesses. Physical evidence also failed to support the state's theory. Gunshot residue tests detected no traces on Tom's hands, whereas residue was found on both of Ashley's. Scratches on Tom's chest, which had initially been considered signs of a struggle, were later determined to contain no traces of Ashley's DNA. Likewise, nail scrapings from Ashley's hands did not reveal any DNA from Tom. These findings challenged the prosecution's assertion that there had been a physical altercation between the couple before the fatal shot. Throughout the trial, Tom chose not to testify in his own defense. The proceedings lasted several weeks, with over 40 witnesses taking the stand. The defense built its closing arguments around Ashley's personal struggles, emphasizing the emotional toll of her repeated pregnancy scares, her son's health complications, the effects of her prescription medications, the loss of her job, and her extramarital affair. They argued that these factors had contributed to her fragile mental state in the months leading up to her death. A surprising development in the case was the introduction of letters allegedly written by Ashley. In these supposed farewell notes, she apologized to Tom, described herself as a failure, and expressed that she could no longer continue living. However, Ashley's family immediately questioned their authenticity. They pointed out that these letters had surfaced years after her death, and they insisted that Ashley had never displayed any signs that she would have written such messages. To them, the letters felt fabricated, further fueling their belief that Tom was responsible for her death. The jury deliberated for 3.5 hours, which included a 1-hour lunch break, before reaching a verdict. Tom Fallis was found not guilty of second-degree manslaughter and all related charges. The decision devastated Ashley's family. Her parents remained convinced that Tom had played a role in Ashley's death. They filed lawsuits against the Evans Police Department, alleging that critical evidence had been concealed or falsified. However, their lawsuits were ultimately dismissed. Despite the legal outcome, Ashley's family refused to accept the verdict. They continued to believe Tom was responsible, but they remained committed to maintaining a relationship with Ashley's children. Through court agreements, they secured visitation rights, ensuring they would stay in the children's lives. Meanwhile, Tom faced financial hardship due to mounting legal expenses. He focused on rebuilding his life while pursuing his education. Seeking a fresh start, he moved his children to another state to be closer to his sister. To them, he explained that their mother's death had been a tragic accident, though he planned to provide more details when they were older. Even after the trial's conclusion, lingering doubts persisted. Each new revelation seemed to raise more questions than answers, leaving the case shrouded in uncertainty, one that, for Ashley's family, remained far from closed.